Kia ora and welcome to this Zui today. We've got a really interesting one for you today. We're going to be talking about mapping Census 2023 in the New Zealand Deprivation Index, getting hold of that data, what the data means and how you can use it, and lots of different interesting things for you to have a look at. Today I'm joined by my colleague Tania Tahira, called Dwayne Tokunga from Totu Te Whenua, and we'll be doing a bit of a tag team approach with you today. First though, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tania from Tātauranga Aotearoa Stats NZ, and she's going to give us a bit of an intro to the census and to the deprivation data. And then in the second part of the session, I'm going to be stepping you through of how to get the data for yourselves, process it if you wish, and then put it into map formats and have a look at some of the ways and means that you can do your own mahi with the data. So yeah, just a reminder, if you can mute your microphone, unless you have partai, I'll be minding the chat as well. So if you have any partai, any questions, please do feel free to put them in there. And I think I'll just hand over to you, Tania. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Dwayne. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Tania Tokunga, no hokianga oku tupuna. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Hi everyone. So we're kia Tātauranga Aotearoa, and we're just gonna go through some like census stuff and just briefly talk about the deprivation index as well. So I've prepared a little presentation that I will just quickly share with you. So mapping Census 2023 data and the deprivation index. So as we all know, recently, well, over this year, we've been releasing our census data, and we just had another data set release, would be last month, and we've now got the totals by topic released. All right, so these are the 2023 census data sets and the geographies that they are available in. So I guess these kind of call these the 4 data sets, and they include variables like population change, Māori descent, age group, ethnic group, and dwellings. And those data sets are available at the regional council level, territorial authority, and statistical area 2. And as you see there, we've got totals by topic now. Dwayne will show you all that real cool data later. And that's available up on Aotearoa Data Explorer and will be available in geospatial format kind of early December on Data Finder if you do use that platform. But that will be available as statistical area 2 as well as statistical area 1. And I have included the New Zealand Deprivation Index in here, which will be available as totals by topic, but it's created by Otago University, so it's not a data set that comes from stats, but it is based on, it's still based on census variables and produced after the census is released. Right, so our first variable So population change, 2023 census population change. So with this data set, we've got the total population for 2013, 2018, and the 2023 census, as well as the percentage change between the censuses. So it's the percentage change between the 2013 and the 2018. And then we've got the percentage change value between the 2018 census and the 2023 census. So there's like 5 variables in that data set. And our next one is our 2023 census Māori descent population change. This one, actually, you'll see a bit of a theme with all these data sets with the variables that they do have in them when it comes to the year. So generally, usually they contain kind of the last 3 census years. So this one again has the Māori descent indicator, usually resident population counts from the 2013, 2018, and 2023 censuses. So the Māori descent indicator categories, they are Māori descent, no Māori descent, and then there is the don't know category. And then like with the population change data set, we also have the percentage change between the counts. Percentage change between the census years. So you get a really good indication of decreases, increases, and changes between censuses. And so the next one we have is our, I guess our age group data set. That again has the past 3 years, the past 3 censuses, as well as the percentage change between these censuses. And with this one, they ordered them into something called life cycle age groups. So for this data set, the life cycle age groups are under 15 years, 15 to 29 years, 30 to 64 years, and 65 years and over. And then for our next one, we've got the census population change by ethnic group. And again, it's like the previous ones when it comes to the census years in this data set, as well as having the percentage change between censuses. And the ethnic groups that we have within this data set are European, Māori, Pacific peoples, Asian, and then we've got Middle Eastern, Latin American, and African, and then we've got other ethnicity. And I guess our kind of final last core census data set is the change in occupied and unoccupied private dwellings. This is a data set that actually came out in the last lot of geospatial data that was released. So it's a data set that contains occupied and unoccupied dwelling counts from the 2023 census. It's also got 2013 and 28 within it. and it's got the percentage change between censuses as well. So totals by topic. So this is where we get to the data sets where you get more variables basically, as well as a more detailed breakdown with some of those data sets I just spoke about. So yeah, so it's a really, really good set of data sets if you do kind of need more detailed information or breakdown with some of those variables. So I'll start with the individuals just because of the data sets that I was speaking about. So the individuals data set, it's for the census, usually resident population count. And individuals data set contains like population, Māori descent, ethnicity, and age, but with variables like age, there's like a more detailed breakdown. For example, they not only have that life cycle grouping, they also have like a further age group breakdown into like 5 years. So yeah, there's that 5-year age group that they have available if you do want more detailed information. And they also have other variables such as languages spoken, gender, and this one also contains the disability indicator. So the next one, families and extended families. So this variable, or sorry, this data set includes variables for families and extended families in households in occupied private dwellings. So it's got the count of families, things like number of people in family. It's also got count of extended families, things like total family income, and other variables kind of related to that data in those questions within the census. Next, I'll go to dwellings. So dwellings contains information about dwellings, and the variables are for occupied private dwellings again. And I should have mentioned before actually, as well as with families and extended families. If it's not, it will be stated in the data set as well. So with this data set, some of the variables are access to basic amenities, dwelling mold, fuel types used to heat dwellings, and a whole bunch of other variables to do with that, or to do with dwellings. And then the last one is households, and that's just the kind of similar to dwellings, but count of households in occupied private dwellings. And just have a quick look at what variables.
Oh, Tanya, just checking, we're just looking at the totals by topic slide still.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, no, that's all good. So things like access to telecommunication systems, number of usual residents in household, number of motor vehicles, and a whole bunch of other things that Dwayne will can show you. So next is deprivation index. So this one is, so the deprivation index is it's a data set, like I said, produced by Otago University after each census. It is an area-based measure of socioeconomic deprivation. It's based on, it's displayed as a decile, and it's on the scale from 1 to 10. So you've got 1 which represents areas with the least deprived scores, and 10 represents areas with the most deprived scores. And it's based on 9 census variables. And this year, this census, those are the variables that it has been based on. So those variables, or the indicators, they can actually change from census to census. It does sometimes depend on if there's been a change in the census question itself too. So for this census, there have been some small changes and adjustments compared to 2018, and the 3 ones are, so there's been a change to the upper age limit. So it was at 65 in 2018, and it's been increased to 75. And sorry, I should have said this is for the sole parent family variable. And there was also a change in the income categories in the census form. So that had a bit of an impact on the income variable. And the last change that happened was they used gender and not sex in crowding calculations. And that's kind of it. Those have been the kind of changes and adjustments since the 2018 census. That's the end of what I've got to share. So now on to the interesting stuff.
That's great. Thank you, mate. And I was thinking all the way through it, gosh, this is just nice to just take a slow walk through what these data mean, because I talk very fast and I get straight into the details. So if you can let what Tania just described for a moment, because some of this next part could be a bit hard, but I'm going to give you the info, and you will be able to see how what Tania's described, how it's implemented by stats. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Let me jump straight to the end of what we're going to do. So in preparing for this webinar, what I did is I went to the stats website. I took the data. I took the data from Otago University as well, the deprivation data, and I did a whole bunch of very frustrating workflows in Excel. Then I put them into my GIS and published them as this application. And so you are more than welcome to have a tutu. And for those of you not sure, I often use the word tutu. It means to have a play. So I'm going to put in here in the chat just now a link that will allow you to open this app. And while you're clicking, I'll describe what it is. Let me just check. So for those of you familiar with that short URL we use, it's /census23. Let me just check that that one works. There we go. Should do. Yep, we're good to go. Okay, so you can ignore that pop up. This takes all of the data that Tania was just describing, and we're fast forward right to the end of what it looks like in reality. So census has been taken in 23, data has been processed, made available on the website. I've downloaded it and processed it and made it available in here. So what I've done is I've created, first thing I did was create a small web map, and just going to focus on Tamaki Makaurau for this bit. I made a web map using the census data and the deprivation, and remember it's the opposite as I think Raven put on the chat. Level 1 is the least deprived, level 10 is the most deprived. 10th of the population. It's important to remember it's the 10th. All of these are 10th. So 10% or 1 decile, 10% more or less of the population. So what we can see here, when I look at this map, and it may take a short while to update, it tells me within this map view, there are about 250,000 people represented here. And so what that tells me by deprivation decile, or per 10%, that in this particular map view, there are about 83,000 people that fit within that 10th decile, and only 3,000 or so within the first. Now, if I pan the map like this, it may take a moment or two to refresh now that we're all hitting the data, but you can see that came up pretty quick. You get quite a different picture here. Reduced 10, 9, 10, and 11, which is sort of the most deprived, to the least deprived, which is 1, 2, and 3. So you're more than welcome to pan around and have a look at that map. What you're seeing is the result of some of the data and how we present it. And I'll show you next of what that looks like. So feel free to have a tutu. If you're really keen on how to get your fingers into the data, that's what we're going to do now in a very basic, simplified way. So up the top here, I've made it a bit easier for us all. I've gone the source data. So where do we get this data from? So the first step is, I've just got to mind my screen share. First step is we go to Stats NZ, Tauranga Aotearoa, and we go to the Aotearoa Data Explorer, which is just a new product that they've been experimenting with to make this data available. And what I've done over here is I've gone search SA1, so Statistical Area 1, which is kind of more or less the same as a mesh block, more or less. And so there are 4 results that come. And if you remember that nice, gentle PowerPoint that Tania shared, there were dwellings, households, individuals, and families and extended families. And maybe Tania, if you could put, because I can't recall off the top of my head, difference between what a dwelling is and a household. I assume you can have a dwelling with maybe 2 households as opposed to families as well. So if you could maybe take a stab at that for me in the chat, just to distinguish between those 4. So just keep an eye on those 4. Now, the thing you can do is you can go in here and you can do filters and things. But me as a GIS mapping person, I just want all the data because I can do the filtering myself. I don't need to necessarily do it in this tool. So I come over here and I go, and I had a look at both of these CSVs. CSV is like an Excel file. Give me them both, have a look. The first one, unfiltered data and tabular text. I'm like, holy cow, what have I got myself in for? Because I couldn't open it, Excel. The unfiltered data in a wide format, I managed to download. Now, if I just click this one, I'm not going to, oh, it's open already because I've already just done that earlier, downloaded it and opened it in Excel. So this is what the data looks like when you get it from stats. And this really did my head in because there are 4 column headings at the top. So you'd be used to, a table of data and you have a nice row of data down the side. This is what it is. And then across the top, you might have 1 column or 1 row of column headings. So in here, in fact, you can see there are actually 5. So this row, which I thought, oh, is that the column header? It has got the 2018, 2013, 2018. Looks like this one might be one that I've already filtered out. Or am I just misreading it? No, it's missing the 2020, missing the 2013. Maybe it was missing on there. It doesn't matter. For the sake of easy use and access of the data, what I've had to do, because the data is so large, is I've removed 2013 and 2018 for the purpose of this wee exercise so that we can do something with the data. Now, if I see if I can figure out how to make this wider, it's just for some reason it is not letting me click to make that wider in my Excel just at the moment. I don't know why. But in the top here, let's pick on this random heading. This data is for 23. Now, just up in here, you'll see the actual data. It tells me it's of the data set of occupied private dwellings. For every total for the data set, so total population, there's a whole number of subsequent subcategories. And this is where you get a value of 1, indicating to me, okay, these are the totals and these are the subcategories. So if we have a look in here, access to basic amenities, total responses, total occupied private dwellings. This is where it gets complex. The next one is a subcategory of that. So access to basic amenities, none of these in 2018, none of these in 2023. There's also a 2013 that's missing in here. Long story short, what I did is I went insert, and for some reason it's just not working there. I'm going to see if I can open that one that we just downloaded. Maybe this one will work. Basically, what I did is I took the 5 headings and I read through them and figured out what is the pattern, because I'm always too impatient to read the instructions. So just like most people, I'm sure. What I did is I went through and I figured out, okay, if it's total, it means the total. If it's 1, that means it's a subcategory of these. So what I then did is I went through and I went insert, and I went, if it's 2013, and only because this column is 2013, forget about 2023. Forget about 2013 and forget about 2018, because basically, in essence, what I did is I went delete. Oh, another 2018, delete. So I went, now we're just left with just 2023. And the reason I did that is just for speed and also so I could get it done in a short period to demonstrate. Then I went concatenate. So I went equals concatenate. Now don't worry about this. You don't need to do this because we've already done this for you. Concatenate, join this field, put a space, what I call a pipe. And if you have a look above your enter key on your keyboard on computer, there'll be a little pipe, one leaning with a backslash and one just above it that not many people use. But it's not a special character, so it doesn't interfere with our data processing. And then I've gone, put that one after it. So when I go and look at my heading, now I've got quite a long heading, but when I do this for all 700 headings, it comes out and it actually looks okay. So then I've done that and I get rid of, I paste it, I go paste the values only, and then I go, okay, I don't need those anymore, delete. I also don't need to know that it's 23 because the whole data set is delete. So that's just very, very quickly what we did to get the data and to then join it onto the polygons, the areas that represent those SA1 blocks. So we've only gone with the very finest ones here. Now what Tony described there is that stats will also go through this process, and they'll do it in a bit slower pace, a bit more measured, because they'll understand the data better than I do, but they will then make it available for users, geosmappers to go ahead and use. So let's see, can I open the web map? So what have we done so far? We went to stats, we got the data, we opened it in Excel, we did some configuration with the headings, we deleted 2013 and 2018 data, then I brought that into my geosmapping software, and I joined that table to my geographies, my shapefiles of the SA1s, joined it, and then the last step is I colored them by level 1 to 10. And that's what you're seeing here in this data. Zoomed in, have one statistical area or one neighborhood or one mesh block. When I click on it, you can see it here, this little white line here. I click on it, it's going to pop up. And now what you can see is this is all of the census data that Stats has made available as of yesterday. So this is a very, very long table, but all of those factors that Tania was describing, you can access in here. Not just some of them, but they're all of them. Not all of them have got data in, however, because some areas they anonymize the data because it maybe is too specific, and there's often, for example, if you wanted to avoid people whose occupation was a taxi driver and that has a disability, then, and you know, these kinds of things would allow you to potentially identify an individual. So to do that, there's often no data with those spots. So then I colored them by 10 or so. So if I click on this one as a different area, just a random area. There we go. It's a bit slow because it's a big data set. When we come down here, we can see this particular block that is highlighted. Just click off that. The statistical area 1 code, that's the number that everything is joined by. So I took that number and anything from the data that I got from Stats, I could join to that table. And it tells me the data set year, 23, the deprivation level, the indices between 1 and 10 for this area is 10, so it's red, so that's good. The score in deprivation, so before they assign a decile, 1 to 10 for everyone, they use those factors in the census. It gives you a score, and then they use that score to divide into the deciles. There's also this field here. So UR stands for usually resident. That means the people that usually reside there. And on Census Night in 2023, there are 258 people in this area. SA1 or mesh blocks don't have a name, but SA2, which is a combination of many SA1s, sometimes have got a name. So this would be Ferguson. And sometimes, most times, that will relate to a suburb. Then Otara, SA3, that's a bigger area, which I don't have on here, but that, of course, is a very large suburb of Auckland. And then the TA, the Territorial Authority, that is Auckland, and then the Regional Council as well, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got other administrative areas. Here is where the real meat and potatoes data begins. So here we have access to basic amenities, total responses, has no access to any basic amenities in this area, 0. Access to basic amenities, cooking facilities, 36. Tap water that is safe to drink, 27. And remember, these are interpretations of people's responses from the census form as well. So if I felt that my tap water wasn't safe to drink, and that's what I put in my census form, that's what's reflected here. Basic amenities that have a kitchen sink, 36, and I'm going to do a couple more of these. Have access to a refrigerator, 36. Bath or a shower, 39. And what was our total out of up here? That could be house. This is dwellings, number of dwellings as well. So it's not necessarily people. And that's also why I've added those building outlines from LINS to help get an idea of how many buildings are there. They're not necessarily all dwellings. They're not necessarily all households either. Or for example, if those are apartment buildings, you know, there are multiple families, maybe there are multiple households and multiple dwellings. Into the data here, we get into mold as well. If we keep skimming through, this is, we're basically reading the combination of that spreadsheet that I downloaded. What I'd done is when I squished them all together, this is what the result of that is. Remember, I took out 2013 and 2018 just to save time and a bit of space. But in the future versions, if I did it again, I would include those because we want to compare between those 2 years. So here we have heat pumps, wood burners. So we're going through all of the dwellings here, and then eventually it turns into families. So families, questions relating to families here. As we come down further, we get into households, and then as we keep scrolling, we're going through, and this is just for one, and this is for every neighbourhood throughout all of Aotearoa, remember, not just this one, this is everywhere. Gets into ethnicity, as Tanya mentioned about descent, descent, not descent, of Māori descent, and these kinds of different attributes within the census questionnaire that are represented here. So it does take a bit of time to get your head around what all of these represent. But the simplest way for me, the way I picked it up, was just by looking through this, reading through, okay, I know that that's probably the same each time, but then the second part, it's telling me, okay, there's not much data here anyway, highest qualification, no qualification, 54. So this is coming into the individual data set. Level 1 certificate, level 2 certificate, and so on. So when you have that for every single mesh block or SA1, then you can start doing some interesting things when you look at broader pictures. So let's have a look just before we get on back into that, that dashboard view. Let's see if we can bring up, looks like the interweb's a bit slow. Should be some layers here. You'll be able to access that as well. But in here are some other ways to visualize. Let's see, is that going to come up? Here we go. Just down here. So you'll be able to access this very shortly. If I turn that off, and then I come down here and I go, okay, show me one dot for every person. And I turn those on. I'll just turn that off. So here's one dot for every person. So if we go to a different area, just because we can, let's go to deciding. Today we're going to Gisborne. So when we zoom in here, one dot for every person. This is, of course, distributed across that mesh block, that SA1. And because, of course, all that privacy is built in, these are just randomly spread dots. So for whatever the number is for each SA, it's just randomly distributing that number of dots. If we go density by ethnicity, so if I work out how to turn on the legend, what we've got here is by Asian, European, Middle East, Latin American. If we zoom out, we can see some general trends. We've got more purples coming through here, so we've got European. If I deliberately go up the coast a bit, we should see more Māori. We come in here, Tolaga. So we can see the shades in here are more likely Māori, but it's just one dot for everybody. Just a different way to represent the data. Of course, it's not individuals. And we can also have charts. So the same data, but represented in charts, chart form. So in this case, Māori represented as purple. And what did I do with this one? Maybe I ran out of time there. Okay, doesn't matter. So what I then did is I added in some Māori land blocks, added in the suburbs, added in marae, and also the iwi areas of interest, which is from Te Puna Kokiri. So point making here is I've got census data, but I've also got other data sets in there as well. Then I took this and I created this dashboard, which you can now access. And if we just have a look at some of the data in here, there's a couple of things I just wanted to point out for you. Wherever the map goes, it will update these graphs. Sometimes it may be a little bit slower depending on how much data it's got to pull in. But up in the top here, you can see it's giving you a summary of how many families in this area, number of marae, total number of buildings, number of people usually resident, and then by each decile of deprivation. And remember, Tanya described how the deciles are, how the deprivation indices are built up using select parts of the census. So if I zoom out on my view a little bit, I'm just going to zoom out on my browser, but not the map. You can see some of the ones that I just used as examples here. So in here, I've got Māori, Pacific peoples, Asian, European, I put other, and then there's also ethnicity pie graph. So when I move the map, this will change. Down the bottom here, I've also used different attributes from the census. I've gone, okay, in one of the household, I think there's a couple of questions about crowding or not crowded. And so if I have a look here, I've got crowded versus not crowded. If I have a look at difference between the two, often you will find a correlation between crowded and deprivation, as you can see here. There's no correlation here, but there's a very strong correlation there. It's slightly different here from not crowded, but it also is higher in the less deprived areas, as you'd expect. If we go with damp, you've got a very strong correlation between deprived indices. And then if we go sometimes damp, still pretty strong correlation. But I think this is the one I really wanted to point out because this was like, wowza. If we go not damp, in some areas, there's a massive change and the graph goes the other way entirely. If we go somewhere other than South Auckland, maybe somewhere up here. Give that a second to load in. So if we go damp, very strong correlation, different picture again, sometimes damp, more or less the same. Not damp, often that will swing far down the other way. I know I was using a different area when I prepared it, but it was quite obvious. It flips around the other way. Family size, so this is also using some of that family data set, just one question out of that whole family data set, which there are maybe, I don't know, 170 different questions. Remember in there by 3 years as well. For every 3 years, those 70 questions are answered. So I'm just using one, which is 2023. And so what this is telling me is by deprivation, in this area shown on the map, there is a larger family size in areas where there is more deprivation in this case. If I go family income, as you'd expect, and maybe this is the one I was thinking of, where you have income versus deprivation, there's often a correlation between more deprived earning less, whether either unwell, not accessing facilities, all of those factors that go into it. And I should say that just over on the left here, you can pop out this, and it describes all of those factors. Unemployment is one factor in there. So of course you're going to see some impact in family income. And associated with that, education, access to transport and other things. Just on the left here, there's a pop-out that describes deprivation, because I think I've always felt this is a really neat way to visualize that correlation between the different factors in the census. And if we have a look at average work hours, this one's a bit of a mixed bag, where you have the least deprived spending more hours at work. And if we come to an area where perhaps there's a bit more less deprivation, you'll probably see this tilt. People earning more typically might work more, but it's not always the case. But these are also things I'm not an expert in. What else do I want to show you? Up here, if you're wanting to find an area of interest, it's all refreshing, I think. Take a moment to update. Let's say I was interested in Maniapoto, then I could click on there. It'll go to Maniapoto area, then King Country, and you'll get a very different picture here. You can also go by region if you wanted to, let's say, pick Nelson. Hopefully I fixed it so it doesn't overwrite there. Maybe it's not going to. Oh yeah, here we go. So it just affects the map, and then whatever's on the map is visualized by the graphs. So there's just a couple of things I wanted to show you here. On this little menu, there is this stats data source. You can download the processed data. So if you want to go to Google Drive, you can get a copy of the data. If you want to open that web map that I showed you, and you can turn on and off and have a play, you can probably go file save as if you've got a free Esri account, and just use a Google login to create a free Esri account. You can have a play around with that map. The last thing I wanted to point out to you was Te Whata. So in partnership with Tauranga Aotearoa, iwi Leaders Group, Data Iwi Leaders Group, have a partnership, and they've also put some data out here, particularly of interest for Māori. I don't believe you can download it and do your own analysis at this point in QGIS or in Esri, but you can certainly come in here and get some very detailed focused in statistics. If we just pick on random hapu. So you'll get a nice summary across all of the data in here. So this will take care of most of your weekend, having a look through here. And in here, of course, they've got a bit more time. They've gone through it a bit slower for a specific purpose, where you can also do comparisons between the 3 years. So remembering when I did my quick analysis, I dropped off 2013, 2018, because I was really just wanted to focus on get some data in there and see what's there now. Whereas what they've been able to do is compare between 23 and 2018. And of course, in 2018 there was that there was a lot of issues with data quality when stats went to leap into the digital age and didn't quite get it right, and then had to backfill a lot of stuff. So that's there and available for people to have a look at as well. And then up the top here, I think if you get in touch with those folks, you might be able to get a copy of some data if you're really wanting to manipulate that for yourself. But this would be a good place to start having a look through for your own hapu, rohi. Let's have a look, just one last example on here. Let's see. So you can do comparisons. So some really neat functionality in here as well. And one thing that they have got, which I think is really great, is they've got a detailed description of where those, about the data, where it comes from, the quality of the source you can see in here. A bit more information that you can draw down into. And so to access that, tewhata.io, if you haven't seen it already, and I've put it just in the link up in here so you can access it there. Okay, I'm going to, that's what I wanted to share with everybody, just to show you going through that process, getting the data for yourself, tidying it up, getting it ready to use in your own GIS. Now you can of course also use that data that I've put up there, if you are an ArcGIS user, if you go arcgis.com, and if you're wanting to put this into your own maps or create your own dashboard, what you can do is just go, if you go Census 23, and I'll just leave my data in there, copy, until Stats puts out a more authoritative data source. This is not what I was after. Deprivation. There we go. So here's the one data set with everything in it. And it just describes a bit of the methodology and where you can grab it from and download it and create your own maps, add it to your own maps if you want. It's got pretty much everything that's available just now put in there. It's about 700 or so different fields. So there's quite a bit in there. Just put that link in there as well. And then if there are any partai, just put that link there. Census 23, there we go. Okay, that's probably enough from me for now.